In the first 6 episodes of this series, we've studied the cycle of ages from the viewpoint of the ancient Vedic sages, as well as Sri Yukteswar's theory of a 24,000-year cycle. In this episode, I'm going to present new and more specific information regarding what time it is on Earth. As I've stated before, knowing where we are in the cycle of ages is very important information because it centers us on the Earth's cosmic rhythm and reveals the flavor of events we can expect in the future. Knowing what time it is helps us to harmonize our lives with the macro-energetic environment. But before we get into the age clocks themselves, we need to clear up some key misconceptions that have clouded many theories regarding the age of the Earth until today. The first on our list is to deconstruct what the modern term the Age of Aquarius means and why I think describing the ages using the 12 zodiac signs has no observable or factual basis in the sky clock. In this episode, I will venture to explain why we should not be using the sun's 12-sign zodiac to identify energetic patterns in the ages, but instead we should be using the moon's zodiac, also called the lunar mansions, and in the Vedic tradition are called nakshatras, in order to identify the energetic patterns. Later, I'll give specific dates for where I believe we are in the cycle of ages and what celestial energies are most prominent during various periods in history. But to get there, we need to differentiate between the sidereal and tropical methods of measuring time in order to separate the 12-sign zodiac we're all familiar with from the stars themselves. Afterwards, we'll talk about the moon's zodiac, the lunar mansions, and then combine these ideas to where we are in the cycle of ages. What makes our celestial sphere a clock is that every year on the vernal equinox, the 24-hour period of equal day and night, which lands on March 20th, or March 21st, the stars will have shifted 50.3 arc seconds from where they were the previous year. This is called the precession of the equinoxes and is the prevailing timekeeping device of Earth, which I covered in episode 1. It is an observable fact that the stars are slowly moving in a westward direction from year to year. But what is the watch face we're keeping time on? In other words, the clock hand or the indicator of the time is the vernal equinox point in the sky. The precession is the clock's movement. But what do we use as the numbers on the clock? Simply observing the sign constellation at the vernal equinox would point to the ages changing according to those constellations. This is the basic rationale for the Age of Aquarius, but there are many problems with this interpretation, as we'll see when we dig into the definitions of how we divide the zodiac into 12 signs in the next section. There are no mentions in any classical astrological or astronomical texts from any tradition marking ages of the Earth using the 12 zodiac signs, which is problematic from the outset because all of the astrological information we have today originates in ancient texts. So there's no clear definition of ages related to the zodiac signs from antiquity. So when was the idea of the Age of Aquarius introduced into society? The idea of a new age seems to have originated amongst French intellectuals after their revolution in the 1780s, which was expanded upon by mystics during the 19th century, such as Madame Blavatsky, who mentioned the Age of Aquarius by name in her 1887 article, The Esoteric Character of the Gospels. It has been suggested that the Age of Pisces was alluded to in esoteric Christianity through the symbol of the fish to represent Jesus, and also Jesus being a fisher of men. There is also the mention of a man carrying a pitcher of water in the Gospels of Mark and Luke. Go into the city, and a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him. This mention is interpreted esoterically as the sign of Aquarius, because it specifically mentions the two parts of the symbol, a man and carrying a pitcher. The Age of Aquarius is often described in utopian language. When there is harmony and equality amongst all people of the world, injustices will disappear, and there will be an ascension of consciousness and higher awareness towards divinity. Now let's dive into how the zodiac signs are configured
to be clear about how to analyze the changes of the ages according to the stars.
The ecliptic is the line that the sun travels in the sky from our perspective, and along this line all of the other planets move no farther than 8 to 10 degrees from it. The constellations behind this line are the star clusters grouped together to form the constellation of Aries, Taurus, etc. When we use the term sidereal, we're simply saying that we're measuring something marked by the stars. The sidereal zodiac counts the 12 divisions of the sun's path along the ecliptic based on the star markers. Some sidereal astrologers use equal divisions of 30 degrees, and others have unequal divisions because the constellations have different sizes. Some are larger than others. The tropical zodiac counts the 12 divisions of the sun's path along the ecliptic based on the sun's movements along the tropics and the equator. As seen from our perspective on Earth, when the sun is exactly aligned with the Earth's equator at sunrise on March 20th and begins moving toward the Tropic of Cancer at 23.4 degrees north latitude in the northern hemisphere, from that period from March 20th until the sun reaches that point in the sky, the Tropic of Cancer, we call that the spring season in the northern hemisphere. When the sun reaches the Tropic of Cancer, it stops moving north, which is the summer solstice on June 20th. Then the sun starts moving backwards every day towards the equator again. When it arrives at the equator is another 24-hour period of equal day and night, which is the autumnal equinox on September 20th. Then the sun begins moving towards the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere, reaching there on December 20th, the winter solstice. The sun then moves back towards the equator again, arriving there on March 20th, another spring equinox, completing a one-year cycle of the sun's pivoting movement in the sky from our perspective. This pivoting movement of the sun is what establishes the tropical zodiac. But instead of dividing the ecliptic into 4 signs marked by these 4 important points during the year, we're dividing it into 12 signs of 30 degrees each. The major mistake that astronomers and astrologers made between the years 200 AD and 500 AD was locking the 30-degree division of the first sign Aries with the stars in the sky. As mentioned before, the stars are visibly moving and in a westward direction. This is how the sidereal zodiac was created, locking the stars with the zodiac signs. But the problem with the sidereal zodiac, or a constellation-based zodiac, is mistaking what the signs are, which are divisions of time based on the equinoxes and solstices. The equinoxes and solstices are not moving because every year the sun makes the same pivot points at the tropics and lands at the equator at the same dates, give or take 2 or 3 days. The sun's movement in the sky is the basic for the zodiac being tropical, meaning no matter where the stars are, the division of the sun's path isn't changing. To prove this astrologically, look at the signs' modalities, either movable, fixed, or dual. Movable signs initiate and change things, fixed signs steadily build on what was changed, and dual signs complete the changes and prepare for a new change, or the next movable sign. And remember, the movable, fixed, and dual signs always follow that order. In the tropical zodiac, the movable signs begin at these 4 important points, the equinox and solstices, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. In the sidereal zodiac, the movable signs don't align with when the sun is visibly changing direction. On January 14th, when Capricorn is said to begin, there are celebrations in India for the sun's beginning to move towards the equator. But the sun has been visibly moving north towards the equator since December 20th. So in the sidereal zodiac, the sign's modality of being movable, fixed, or dual breaks down because the sun's actual visible movement is no longer aligned with the astrological qualities of the signs. Even the most ancient Vedic texts are tropical to many people's surprise, because the tradition of locking the stars with the zodiac signs, the sidereal zodiac, is a predominant Indian tradition, and the Vedic texts originated in India. This brings us to the next major point in the discussion, the zodiac of the moons movement, traditionally called the lunar mansions, which is based on the moving stars that slowly shift every year by 50.3 arcseconds. The sun and the moon are the major objects in our sky, so isn't it curious that we're tracking the sun's movement and creating a zodiac of equal divisions from it? So why aren't we also tracking the moon's movement? The moon has its own ecliptic line which intersects with the sun's, and it would make sense to also divide that ecliptic into divisions just like we divide the sun's. Well, tracking the moon's ecliptic and drawing divisions within it has been done in nearly all ancient astrological systems. The ancient Chinese, Vedic, Persian, and Babylonian astrologers all marked the moon's ecliptic into divisions of either 27 or 28 divisions, saying that the moon spent every night in a different lodging or mansion and moved into the next one the next day. This is because the average time it takes for the moon to travel along that entire ecliptic is 28 days, spending each day in a different mansion. There are many differences between the actual divisions that these systems are using, but the key takeaway is that each system marked the divisions sidereally or star marked, which, as we know, are moving very gradually through the sky, year to year. Each tradition said that the stars themselves, or the clusters of stars, are ruled by divine beings or deities that are ruling over specific aspects of creation, and that they have definable energetic qualities and control certain activities on Earth. The moon's position in one of these mansions was used to determine whether or not to do certain things. Western esotericists through history have also used the lunar mansions for electional astrology, or deciding the best times to plan an event, opportune and inopportune times to perform certain activities. The Vedic technique of Muhurta also uses the moon's position in lunar mansions in the same way. So an easy way to understand it is that we actually have two zodiacs, one for the sun and one for the moon, calculated to each of their unique movement patterns in the sky. During that critical period between 200 and 500 AD, it appears that the Indian astrologers who had always been using the lunar mansions, they locked them with the 12 sign zodiac. While at that same time, Greek astrologers began neglecting the lunar mansions, and that's why in Western astrology today, it's not common to be using the lunar mansions. The astrologers in India applied their understanding of the movement of the lunar mansions, that is, a sidereal movement, star-marked. They applied that to the division of the sun's movement, meaning that now the sun's position in the sky is based on the stars, where previously it wasn't. We know it was around this time because the first lunar mansion in Vedic astrology, Ashvini, identified by the two stars Alpha Arcturus and Beta Arcturus, is today marked at 0 degrees Aries. So the change had to have happened when those stars were at the vernal equinox point. The concept of lunar mansions has become an overlooked portion of astrology over the past 1,000 years in the West, and even today there are still many mysteries as how to divide these mansions, who the deities are, and what the energetic expressions of the mansions are. The sun's divisions are much more concrete and definable, and most zodiac astrology focuses on the sun's divisions. But this second zodiac, the moon's lunar mansions, I believe will become more and more important as more awareness comes to astrological science. There's still so much research that needs to be done into this area. And so finally, this brings us to the cycle of ages. If we're going to be telling time using the gradual movement of the stars, then we should be using the moon's zodiac, which are divisions based on the stars moving. Here are the yugas, or the ages of the earth, using the ascending and descending model. I've placed the Vedic 27 nakshatras alongside it. The first major question is, what nakshatras go where? What is the starting point? Very interestingly, in the Chinese divisions of the lunar mansions, which is arguably the oldest, the beginning of the mansions begins at the star Spica, one of the brightest stars in the sky, and that mansion is called Jiao. In the Vedic tradition, this same region of stars is called Chitra, meaning the best, brightest, most excellent. I've placed Chitta Nakshatra in the middle of the Satya Yuga, the apex of possibilities for life on Earth. And if you remember from the Satya Yuga Golden Age episode, anything that a person holds in their mind, they're able to manifest immediately into reality. And only the souls which have the highest level of spiritual evolution are able to live during this period of time. Chitta is ruled by the deity Tvasta, the architect of the gods, whose creative capacity to materialize beauty is unrivaled to the rest of the other nakshatras. The highest level of human achievement, the top of the Satya Yuga, and in the Chinese system is the first nakshatra, is ruled over by the deity that rules over the brightest and most excellent level that humans can aspire to, using precision and harmony to manifest the highest levels of beauty imaginable. This may sound like a very materialistic energy to rule over the highest spiritual age, but Chitra's energy is founded upon inner excellence and layered perception of universal harmony, which thereby gives the capacity to produce outwardly high levels of layered beauty. Look over the episode dealing with the Satya Yuga Golden Age to really get a feel for what it's like to live during that period of time. Notice that this places Mula Nakshatra at the beginning of the Satya Yuga. Mula means root, and its energy is about arriving at the root of all untruths and then destroying them. This shows that nothing that is untrue can survive once the Golden Age has begun, and the remaining lies, deceptions, and falsehoods are finally rooted out, which would be the impurities that still remain from humanity's voyage from the end of the last Golden Age until the beginning of the new one. This also places the first nakshatra in the tradition as it's held today, Asvini, at the very beginning of the ascending Kali Yuga, and Revati as the first nakshatra in the ascending cycle, because remember, the equinoxes are moving backwards. Asvini, the twin horseman, represents power and the ability to muster power in concentrated areas such as cities. Revati is about nourishment and the patient and devoted attention needed for anything to grow healthily. This shows that at the bottom of the Kali Yuga accentuated the pursuit of power. At the beginning of the ascending Kali Yuga, there was a need for the world to begin the process of healing the pain from a materialistic focus on abundance and worldly power, which was done at the expense of spiritual development. And then we slowly begin the ascent into higher ages through loving care of our most essential needs. There are also very strong arguments that the nakshatra Kritika should be placed as the first nakshatra, which is about initiation and new beginnings. This placement of the nakshatras onto the age cycle is vital to help us identify where we are in the cycle of ages, and I plan on doing another video detailing the interpretive significations and how they relate to the energetic environments within each age. So let's not forget about the hand or the indicator on our celestial clock. We use the vernal equinox to mark the time. So where is the vernal equinox falling today? An important number to remember is that the rate of movement is 1 degree per 71.6 years, often rounded up to 72 years. Here is where the sidereal 12 sign zodiac, although it's not energetically accurate as I've already said, this is where we can use it for our own purposes. As mentioned earlier, 0 degrees Aries is today marked at 0 degrees Asvini, the first nakshatra, according to the sidereal Vedic astrologers. According to a sidereal measurement of time, the vernal equinox today falls somewhere between 4 degrees and 7 degrees Pisces, moving towards 0 degrees Pisces. So having moved roughly 24 degrees at a rate of 71.6 years per degree. We divide the 27 nakshatras into this 360-degree circle, and we get 13 degrees 20 minutes for each nakshatra. We just need to do a couple calculations, And so from the sidereal vernal equinox in 2023, this means we are 1 degree 36 minutes left in Uttarabhadrapada Nakshatra, moving towards 0 degrees Uttarabhadrapada Nakshatra. So how long exactly are each of these ages? At 1 degree per 71.6 years, the entire cycle is 25,776 years. And using the calculation of the ages in the 4:3:2:1 ratio, which means that the Satya Yuga is considered 4 out of 4, Treta Yuga is considered 3 out of 4, Dvarpara Yuga is 2 out of 4, and Kali Yuga is 1 out of 4, we get these lengths. So from where the vernal equinox falls today, counting backwards, we get the bottom of the Kali Yuga here. A major factor in this entire discussion is exactly where the vernal equinox falls on the spring equinox. And the most widely used sidereal calculations have the current positions as Lahiri, which is the most widely used sidereal calculation, at 5 degrees 49 minutes Pisces. Remember, they mark it using the tropical zodiac, they don't mark by nakshatras. Raman, 7 degrees 16 minutes Pisces. Fagan Bradley, 4 degrees 56 minutes Pisces. Given the speed at 71.6 years for 1 degree of precession and the lengths of the Yuga at the 4:3:2:1 ratio, we have been out of the Kali Yuga for roughly 500 years, depending on the calculation being used. And keep in mind, each age has a transition period at the beginning and end of each age, which are 1/10 of the time of that age's full length. And this is the time when the energies of the two ages blend into one another, instead of having a hard transition. So if we tack on the transition length of 257 years, 1/10 of the full length of the Dvarpara Yuga, this means that according to Lahiri, we began Dvarpara proper in 1837. For Raman, we began in 1941. And Fagan Bradley, we began in 1774. If we count those transition periods as part of the age, this makes us at the year Lahiri is 443 Dvarpara Yuga, Raman 339 Dvarpara Yuga, Fagan Bradley at 506 Dvarpara Yuga. If we give a time of the age, not counting the transition period as part of the age, we get these numbers. I've made these clocks based on the Earth's current speed of precession, but Sri Yukteswar, who first proposed the ascending and descending model in modern times, said the entire cycle is 24,000 years. This would make the precession to move 1 degree at 66.6 years, and you have to adjust the rate of nakshatra lengths as well. I've made these clocks based on that 24,000 year model. As you can see, the dates are very similar, but this model would require that the precession of the equinoxes speed up at about 4 arc seconds per year, being 54 arc seconds a year instead of 50.3. The planets themselves are not moving at a fixed speed. They sometimes slow down and speed up. So there is a plausibility to the idea that the movement of the celestial sphere can alter as well. In other words, although we have a complex computer instruments to exactly detail the speeds and precise measurements of the movement of the celestial sphere, it's possible that there is an average speed of precession that brings the overall cycle to just about 24,000 years. Now let's go back to the idea of the Age of Aquarius. As you can see, if we're using the sidereal calculations for the 12 signs, we are leaving the age of Pisces and entering into the Age of Aquarius in around 2430 AD, according to the Lahiri calculation.
This is why it was important to talk about sidereal and tropical at the beginning.
Because if the sun's zodiac is based on the equinoxes and solstices, there's no point in saying we are changing between Pisces to Aquarian age, because the vernal equinoxes are not changing from sign to sign. The spring vernal equinox is always 0 degrees Aries because the sun is always at that point in the sky every year. The stars are moving, but we're not basing the 12 sign zodiac on the stars. The 12 signs are based on these pivot points during the year. The moon's zodiac, the lunar mansions, are based on the stars. So it's more logical to be marking the energetic qualities of time within the ages with the moon's lunar mansions. What I'm saying is not new information. It was actually Sri Yukteswar who first aligned the sidereal position of the stars with the Yuga cycle. But at that time he was using the 12 sign zodiac, which caused confusion about the energetic environment of what the age really is. The American astrologer Ernst Wilhelm also put forth the idea that Chitra is the top of the Satya Yuga and Mula marks the beginning of the Satya Yuga. I simply differ with him on the rate of the precession, therefore the years will slightly change. I'm sure there are many others who I am not aware of have also put forward this as a strong possibility to mark the lunar mansion nakshatras with the Yuga cycle in these positions. It's very important that we learn more about the nakshatras in order to connect with the energetic environment we're actually in. As far as the Yuga energetic environment, what is Dvarpara Yuga? Sri Yukteswar called it the age of electricity, when humanity advances its knowledge on how electrical currents are moving through creation. Think about all of the advances in our understanding of electricity since the 1700s. In American schools, we are taught that Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity by tying a key to a kite during a storm, inducing lightning to strike it. I don't believe that he invented modern electricity, but what's important is that around that time, moving forward, humanity began to be able to harness the element fire and create mechanisms to control it with greater skill and ability. Did humanity have the electrical understanding and knowledge before the 1700s? I believe absolutely so. But it appears that these technologies were lost for a period of time during the Kali Yuga, only to be discovered more recently when the Dvarpara Yuga began again. Since the 1700s, we've advanced so far with our understanding of how to use electricity that now we're all carrying supercomputers in our pockets, all which depend on currents of fire passing between tiny circuit boards. And think about the growth of understanding of the electrical currents in our bodies, the chakras, over the past 100 years. Sri Yukteswar was the guru of Yogananda, who developed a system called Kriya Yoga, which is about harnessing these subtle movements of Kundalini energy up and down the spinal column in order to clear out impressions from our astral bodies called samskaras, and thus clearing away the need to be born again to live out those impressions in other incarnations. It's because these samskara impressions get imprinted on our chakras. In addition, the nakshatra Uttarabhadrapada, where we are at the current vernal equinox today, is described as a coiled serpent that purifies through moistened extraction of pure essence from physical matter. This further shows us that this part of the Dvarpara Yuga helps develop the serpentine Kundalini energy flow of our electrical bodies, doing this through calm introspection and meditation. The moistened extraction symbolizes water, and so a more calming and fluid way to go about this purification process. The next nakshatra period, Purva Bhadrapada, is set to begin around 2130 AD, and this has the same serpentine connotation, but instead of moistened extraction through liquids, this nakshatra purifies through fire, a more fierce and quicker process of extracting the spiritual essence from material life. In conclusion, from the basic calculations that I've put forth, we are far beyond the end of the Kali Yuga, and this should give people great hope in that every day we are ascending higher into greater awareness of how our cosmic environment operates, and also translates into an ascending spiritual consciousness, which is our personal connection to divinity. Humanity is at a crux with its current worldwide system of interlocked governments, corporations, and the money powers' attempt to take control of all aspects of human life. It appears that these power blocks are using Dvarpara Yuga electrical technologies to consolidate their power into a technocracy, which is a control mechanism of using technical systems and algorithmic computations rather than human judgment. But since we're moving upwards in the cycle of ages, the energetic environment is gradually expanding humanity's awareness of greater interconnection with divinity. The more that the current powers attempt to restrict the abilities to interconnect on a divine level, the more unstable their technocratic systems will become. A person that chooses to live within the technocratic system lives at the cost of having one's freedom to do and say certain things become more restricted, which is saying that the ability for a person to do their dharma or their duty or their inspired purpose becomes restricted. This is the restriction of human expression so that humans fit into a formula for what the power blocks say it ought to be. But making the choice to live outside the technocratic system has the cost of being less convenient, but supports the ability to live according to one's dharma or divine inspiration, which is to live in harmony with the expanding levels of consciousness indicated by the ascending Dvapara Yuga.